morning, everybody, and happy Friday. This is Nicole Miller on 1490 WDAN Newsmakers. Good morning, Eric Loy.
Good morning.
So, we have a very special guest today. We have author, comedian, filmmaker, and your very own local clown, Ripper the Clown.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So Jake is a really cool guy. He's done a lot around here in the community. He's been an author for quite a while.
Since 2009.
2009. Yes. And so how did that start out? How did you start writing?
Oh, I've always been a writer, and when I talk about this in Dead Wrestlers, Broken Necks, and the Women Who Screwed Me Over, and then the sequel, which is We Leave With Our Guns Out, and I mentioned how when I was a kid, I would always tell my parents Scooby-Doo stories,
right.
And they would write them down. My grandparents too. My parents would leave with my grandparents, and they'd come back, and there'd be stacks of papers that my grandparents had written stories on that I've been telling them, these big elaborate stories. So writing has always been in my blood. It's something I've always done since I was just, able to speak, basically.
That's awesome. That's, when I was a kid, we talked about this a little bit when we did our interview
Yes.
for Piece of My City, but when I was a kid, I used to draw pictures and get like googly eye stickers and put this whole picture together, and then my mom would say, okay, what is this a picture of? And I would tell her the story about the picture, and she would write it down verbatim, like exactly the way I said it. And so now I have these little books with these weird pictures in them with these very strange stories with words that don't even make sense. It's a good way to start writing.
Well, it's in your blood too.
Right, it is. So your very first project is an interesting one. Talk about that.
I met Mike Callahan, retired Illinois State Police Lieutenant, over in Champaign, and I guess long story short, he told me this amazing story of what he had been through with the state police regarding an unsolved double murder that took place in Paris, and within a few months we were writing his book. And that book was entitled Too Politically Sensitive, and it came out in 2009, and it's been the subject of various national TV shows and articles, and it's still a story that's still of interest today because it's unsolved, and
right.
And the situation that seems to never die.
Right, and that book's been around the block.
Yes, it has.
It really has. There's awards and
not for that book, but for my other books, all of my fiction books have won a total of 16 literary awards.
That's awesome. And some of those are like pretty big.
Yes,
awards.
yes. I've won 3 awards at the Next Generation Indie Book Awards, which is considered the Sundance Book Awards, and I've won quite a few at the Hollywood Book Festival, London, England Book Festival. So it's nice to have books receive recognition, especially when you put your heart and soul into them, as I have with all of these projects.
Absolutely. Because you went, you took that first story and did your thing with that, and then you kind of moved into this other world of writing.
Yes, my friends, as I was working on Too Politically Sensitive with Mike, it was a very intense story. And during my downtime, I started doing something that a friend suggested, which is to start recording some of these very weird, strange encounters I've had with people. The weird coincidences in my life that seem to follow me everywhere. So I started doing that, and I started realizing that I had the makings of a really quirky short story collection. So as I was working on Too Politically Sensitive, I was also working on the short story collection, which would eventually be entitled Dead Wrestlers, Broken Necks, and the Women Who Screwed Me Over.
That's a great title.
Says it all, doesn't it?
Right? I mean, you just see the title, it's like, I need to read this book.
and that's still one of my favorite books. It's several people have referred to it as bedtime stories for adults, where they're just little short stories that you could pick up right before you're going to bed.
Right.
And a lot of them are straight fiction, but a lot of them are based on true events too.
Right. I like your concept of, because there's kind of a series, but they're not necessarily in order. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, are you referring to the Ripper the Clown series?
Yes, the Ripper the Clown series.
The Ripper the Clown series, when the clown started picking up some momentum and it kind of took on a life of its own, Well, I guess I should say Ripper the Clown debuted in Dead Wrestlers, Broken Necks, and Women Who Screwed Me Over. He was the dead wrestler referenced in the title.
Right.
And I just liked the name, so I decided I was going to incorporate the clown into each of my books. And it'd be like my little inside joke, and if readers picked up on it, cool. But I was also going to like the fact that I mentioned the clown in every book.
Sure.
And 2012, summer of 2012, I decided that I was going to do stand-up comedy as the clown on Halloween, because I figured that would be the only night of the year I could do stand-up comedy dressed like a clown.
Right.
And I've been dressing like a clown ever since.
Right.
And I never realized it would turn into what it has. And so at a certain point in time, I realized that instead of being a minor player in all of my books, the clown needed to have his own book. And that book turned out to be The Life and Mimes and Zombie Apocalypse of Ripper the Clown, which is a book that I refer to this book as the book that simultaneously redefines and spoofs the zombie genre.
Right.
And then the sequel for that, the unconventional sequel, is The Life and Mimes and Various Times of Ripper the Clown, which is a time travel comedy. And then the latest, The Life and Mimes and the Alien Invasion of Ripper the Clown, it just came out earlier in May. And that is the third installment of the trilogy, and it's a book that simultaneously spoofs the alien abduction UFO fiction genres, as well as the UFO and alien invasion nonfiction genres.
Right. So you take these books and it's not that they're a series and they all go together, but it's not that it's a story that just continues.
No. Each book starts out the exact same way, and then much like my life has, at a certain point in the narrative, it veers off into a different direction. So after the first book and the second book, certain things happen the same, but it turns into a time travel comedy, and the same thing with the alien invasion.
Right. It's kind of like one of those choose your own adventure books.
Exactly. And in the time travel comedy, toward the end, I referenced the choose your own adventure, and all of the different options you have just lead to the very next page.
Right. That's awesome. So when Ripper the Clown was born, what made you decide? I mean, it was Halloween, so you decided to dress up and all that, but what made you decide to go with this character specifically?
Like I said, the name always stood out to me, and I just loved the juxtapose, the Ripper and the clown. It just, that's not your typical clown name. It just sounded gritty and edgy, and various factors fell together, and just using the idea of doing a short story, which is what I actually, before the stand-up comedy occurred, it was going to be a short story about the clown doing comedy, and the gimmick was going to be that he was born that way, but everyone thought he was dressing like a clown, and that's actually how he looked. So, various things occurred in my life where I wanted to do this, because it was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. I'd never been on stage for anything in my life, and so it was doing the clown character. To me, was doing something from my books, doing a performance art type of thing to turn something from my book, from the cold text, into something real.
Right.
And again, I didn't think that it was going to turn into anything more than just a one-shot deal. But literally, I was on stage 15 seconds approximately, and I knew I was going to do it again.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we will have more with Ripper the Clown. We'll be right back. This is Nicole Miller.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Newsmakers. This is Nicole Miller on 1490 WDAN, and we have an awesome guest this morning. We have Mr. Ripper the Clown.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. This guy, the more I have learned about you, the more I'm just like, how have I not met you before? Like, you're just kind of all over the place in Danville.
Yeah, and the surrounding communities too from time to time.
Yeah, for sure.
I love keeping active and always having a project going on, and always working on something, some event or some book. It's creativity. It's just a part of me. So it's something that even if I'm not actively working on something at the moment, my mind is thinking about what's next.
Right, and you just came off of VillainsCon this last weekend. How did that go?
Yeah, VillainsCon was great.
I've had this sickness, so I haven't been making it out in the community that much in the last couple of weeks. But
the guests were amazing. I sold a lot of books. We had a good time. Philo Barnhart, I love that guy. He was there. He's the master animator of so many things. Secret of Nim, Dragon's Lair, Gem, the Smurfs, Super Friends. I mean, and so he told me this amazing story about, he also told Scott Eisenhower when Scott came through, this amazing story about working on the set of Mary Poppins. He was in Mary Poppins,
Wow.
and he told us how, what his scene was all about, and it was just, talking to him was just amazing.
That's really
Yeah.
cool, because I mean, for him to come to Danville,
Yes,
and,
yes.
and with Dick Van Dyke and everything,
Yeah.
I mean, and then to talk about Mary Poppins,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yes, and so it was kind of cool for me. I did a little interview with Philo, which will be on my YouTube channel soon, Ripper the Clown Show, if you'd like to check it out. And so I told him it was kind of interesting that unpredictable cartoon character come to life, meeting the animator of so many,
Right.
legendary and iconic cartoon
Sure.
characters.
That's awesome. There was a lot of other big names too.
Oh, yes.
There was like a bunch of Power Rangers
Yes,
there.
there were.
I was all
Yes,
excited
yes,
about
yes.
the Power Rangers. That was my show growing up. My sister and I. That was our jam. It was the Power Rangers. And who else?
There were some people from Star Trek there.
Wow.
Ari Lehman, the first Jason from Friday the 13th, was there.
That's
They
so
had
cool.
Green Jello performing.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a great weekend, and
That's
I was
so
happy to
awesome.
get to be there. I got to interview Stephen Williams on stage. We talked for about 20 minutes about the Blues Brothers,
Nice.
and part of the Blues Brothers, so I'm told, was filmed in Danville.
Right.
At Continental Filling, I believe is what my Ripper the Clown's dad told me. And so I got to talk to Stephen about John Belushi, and John Belushi is a big inspiration for my comedy. I mean,
Sure.
John Belushi to me is an icon. He was a genius. He can make people laugh by just raising an eyebrow.
Right.
Or maybe saying things that, leading people on to think he's talking about one thing, but then twist it into talking about something else, or visually doing
Right.
something else. And that's not the type of comedy that you see today. The comedy today is crude, it's rude, it's kind of toilet type of humor.
Right.
But Belushi was a real genius where he could perform and do relatable situational comedy.
Sure.
So talking to Stephen Williams, who not only worked on the Blues Brothers, but who knew John Belushi, that was just a real honor
Yeah,
for me.
absolutely.
And you can look that up on Ripper the Clown Show on YouTube as well. I'll be posting that video rather soon. And Stephen, he was just a great guy, and he just loved talking about the Blues Brothers, and he told some amazing stories.
That's really awesome. And speaking of icons, I mean, we all know that Dick Van Dyke is coming back to town.
Yes. and another, big inspiration in my comedy career.
Yeah.
Again, a master at doing situational comedy, all the classics, Stan Laurel, Groucho Marx,
Yes.
Phil Silvers, all these guys who, and Charlie Chaplin, the silent films, who
Right.
had to convey comedy through emotion and not verbally.
Sure.
All of these guys are being inspirations in my life. And I hear a lot of comedians talk about their inspirations, and they're just comedians who've been out in the past 10 years.
Right.
To me, those classic comedians are the people who forged what comedy is. And not only did they forge what comedy is today, but they did so under censorship. So they had to be funny without being, again, like I said earlier, crude and rude and
Right.
going to the lowest common denominator to get a cheap laugh.
Sure.
And Dick Van Dyke would be one of those comedic inspirations. There's a lot of references directly to Dick Van Dyke in my novels. In my cell phone zombies comedy video, I mentioned Dick Van Dyke, and I went to his house on Hazel, and I
Right.
fell in the yard, and we got that on tape. And,
Right.
he was a master of so many things, and one of which I love doing is the one-sided phone call, where you only see and hear
One
what
side of it.
Rob Petrie would be saying to whoever's on the other end of the phone. I love doing that. I
Right.
did that in the cell phone, zombies comedy video, and numerous references to Dick Van Dyke in all of my work. And he's an icon and a TV legend, and he's Danville's favorite comedian, past,
Right.
present, and future.
Absolutely. The fact that he's coming back here, I mean, it's the excitement in the air.
Yes.
You can feel it.
Yes, and-
Everybody's talking about it, and the big, he's doing not several events, but the big one at the high school, and man, I just think it's really cool that he gets to come back here like one last time,
Yes, and a dear friend of mine, she got the role of Mary Poppins at the high school.
Right.
That's going to be amazing.
That's awesome.
And it's just I love, and I even did a rap out at Sleepy Creek Vineyards with Jim Bay Jake. It was an impromptu. No one knew we were going to do it. We got up there and we did it.
Right.
And I incorporated Rob Petrie into the rap, and I love that line in the episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show called The Gunslinger, where he says that he's a slinger turned singer turned rancher turned dancer turned parson turned sheriff.
Right.
And you can even tell if you watch it, and I watched it a lot, that you could tell the look on his face. He was like really proud that he nailed that line.
Right.
So I incorporated that into the rap because not only do I like the line, but I always want to redefine myself as a performer and reinvent myself. And not only that, but challenge myself.
Sure.
So being able to crank out that line in a live rap was really a fun moment for me.
Absolutely.
And not only that, but paying homage to Dick Van Dyke.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, he's just a legend, and it's hard not to just love him, because his style of comedy, like you were talking about the different styles, I mean, his style, he's a lovable guy.
Yes,
He can really, anything can fly out of his mouth.
Yes.
And you're going to smile.
and it's everything, well, case in point, Rob Petrie and Dick Van Dyke, the mannerisms, everything about him. And I don't know how many people have seen his movie called The Comic, which was inspired by Dick Van Dyke's love of silent films and talking about silent film comedians during the filming of the Dick Van Dyke Show. And it's about a silent film comedian. He plays Billy Bright, who's a silent film comedian. It kind of follows him throughout his career. And that movie, when I saw it a few years ago, inspired me to start doing contemporaneous silent films. Because I've always loved silent films anyway, but it was just seeing that movie made me think, I could do silent films.
Sure.
And it's kind of an unheralded, unappreciated classic. So if you love Dick Van Dyke, look up The Comic.
Absolutely. We're going to take another break. We will be right back with Ripper the Clown. This is Nicole Miller on Newsmakers. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Newsmakers. This is Nicole Miller in the studio with Ripper the Clown.
Thank you again for having me. This has been a great interview. I've been having a ball with you.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, you're just kind of a staple in Danville. I mean, honestly, you read your books, and the things that I love is that you throw these things in there about Danville.
Yes, I never mentioned Danville by name, but I mentioned various places, the Fischer, Festival of Trees, a couple of landmarks, street names, that type of thing.
Is Fischer Theater is Ripper the Clown's headquarters?
Yes, in the zombie novel and the alien novel, which again are totally two different stories.
Right.
The Fischer Theater is the clown's headquarters. And in the time travel comedy novel, the Fischer Theater is where he goes to rest after getting pulled over by the police for being dressed like a clown, which actually happened to me in Oakwood. So that in the books is true, pretty much verbatim as to how it happened.
Right.
And in the time travel book, he's sitting in the Fischer and he almost gets struck by lightning on the stage, which is what gives him the rest of the formula for time travel. And that actually happened to me a year or so ago. I almost got struck by lightning on the stage of the Fischer Theater. A friend of mine was with me, and it was a thunderstorm going on outside, and I was like, hey, let's go and look through the door to see how bad it's raining, the stage door. So I stopped being a gentleman. I stopped and let her go on stage first, and had we not taken that little, and she made a joke about, hey, you're pushing, what's going to happen to me? You're letting me go first.
Right.
And something did happen. Had we not had that little exchange, it may have been very bad.
Right.
Because we were maybe a little over halfway into the stage, through the stage, and lightning struck, and just a few feet away from us. Had we not had that exchange, we would have been even closer. I may not be here doing this interview with you right now. And I thought the place was going to burn down. Obviously, lightning strikes the stage, you think.
Right.
But I guess long story short, we went out and got some people. We came from the Fischer. We went back in. No smoke or anything. And I had my camera, and I flashed my camera, took a picture because the lights wouldn't work.
Right.
I wanted to know where it hit.
Yeah.
And I realized when I took my photo with the flash that it had struck a giant pipe. And actually, when I was on the way to the station this morning, I passed the Fischer, and I looked over and I saw the pipe at the top of the. It went straight from the roof to the basement where it grounded out.
Wow.
Yes. So
that's crazy.
So when stuff like that happens, it gets put in a book or a comedy set. That's my life. Yes. I got hit by a herd of deer this past October.
A herd of deer. Not just deer.
One. A herd, and just blindsided me. And that was in the new Alien book.
Right.
And it's in the Alien book. It's a herd of fiberglass deer, but the scene itself is basically the same as to how it happened. And the weird cat that, when I pulled over the side of the road, the weird cat that was sitting on the sidewalk looking at me just mysteriously, that is in the book as well.
That's amazing. That's the best. Taking life story. I mean, everybody has strange things that happen to them in their lives, but when you take those and you document them, I mean, that's forever now. It's out there.
Yes. And my friends know, as soon as something weird happens, that's going to be either the next comedy set or in the next book. And I love doing stuff like that because I think it makes the books more believable. And you've got this clown character, and I've heard from so many people that they read these clown books, and the same thing with the comedy sets. they hear me do comedy or they read the books and they come up to me after the fact and they're like, was this real? Was that real? Was this real?
Right.
I mean, I had a friend of mine, a pro wrestler and an actor, come to one of my stand-up comedy shows, and I did this act, and I'm in this unbelievable getup, and people believe it. And
Right.
he came up to me, my actor friend, and he's like, afterward, he's like, bro, how much of that was real? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I did my job.
Right.
I did one set over in Champaign where I chased a heckler out, and this was this big diatribe about the clown and how he doesn't use Facebook to see what his friends are up to. He doesn't have that class of friends. Instead,
Right.
he just goes to the county clerk website and looks up their court records. So it was like, bam, 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 this friend did this friend did that. At the end, the clown says he's got charges for beating up a heckler. Then he points to the guy, the heckler's in the crowd. The heckler says a couple things. Clown chases him out the door. I did that twice.
Right.
Month or so apart. Both times, people thought it was real.
Right.
Including people who had seen it both times.
Right.
So to me, that's just like, wow, that's just
Yeah,
amazing
that's
to me.
good
And
stuff.
so I love putting stuff like that in my books. I love putting pop culture in my books. I love making people feel nostalgic, and I hear that all the time too. And D.B. Cooper's in my books, John Belushi, Dick Van Dyke, all the people that are referenced that I love in my life.
Yeah.
And the D.B. Cooper, it's a mystery that I've always enjoyed. He's the president in all the Ripper the Clown books and the arch nemesis of Ripper the Clown. And I hear from people that they had no clue who D.B. Cooper was, or had no clue who John Belushi was,
Wow.
etc. And then they
Right.
read my books and they want to know more, so they go and they look
Sure.
and they read about it, and
Yeah.
that makes me feel good because not
Absolutely.
only are the pop culture references bringing nostalgia to people who remember the same things and
Right.
enjoy the same things when they were a kid, but at the same time, it's opening up people to learning about other aspects of pop culture that they were unaware of before.
Sure.
It's really rewarding for me.
So how can people get your books?
You can get my books at Amazon.com. You can get my books at the Fischer Theater gift shop, Stage Presence. I am normally set up at the Farmers Market every Saturday. So plenty of opportunity in the area to get the books. And go on Amazon, read the reviews. All the reviews are amazing. I'm very pleased with how the books have been received.
That's awesome. And you also have a little filming thing going on.
I do. I've been filming videos for a while now. We started doing more elaborate short films. You could check those out on Ripper the Clown Show. Various short films.
You can look that up on YouTube,
Yes,
right?
on YouTube. Yes, Ripper the Clown Show on YouTube. Most recently did a short film with Sean Husseini called The Fan, where I've got this fan following me around everywhere I go, including Schroeder's, going through the drive up. And then recently filmed a video with a dear friend of mine, Hima Rishi from London. And it was a speed date comedy video as a trailer for the Alien novel. And that scene from the speed date is actually in the Alien novel. And so people have really enjoyed my videos. And I've also, whenever a business sponsors my comedy show at Vintage Villains, I always do a commercial for them as a part of the package. And I've had so much positive feedback for those commercials, I started a little side project called Norjack Films, and where we make businesses awesome little commercials.
Right.
And
they're really good. I've watched quite a few of them. You
Well,
do a really good
thank
job.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Jake, thank you so much for coming in and doing this. And thank you. Keep up the good work. I
Thank you.
think you do some really awesome stuff in Danville. You're making people laugh, and you've got some great pieces of writing out there. So
Well, thank you.
keep it up.
Thank you for saying that. It makes me feel good, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
No problem. Everybody go check him out. Look him up on Facebook. You won't be
Yes,
disappointed.
YouTube, Ripper the Clown Show.
All right, everybody. Have a good weekend, and we will see you back on Monday. This is Nicole Miller on Newsmakers.